All right.
G'day, Lukey. How you doing, mate?
Oh,
Good to hear from you. Yeah.
did I
I
hear
was
you
wondering
correctly,
what.
Dr. Jubb, when you told me you actually are from a Long Island as well?
Yeah, our family owned Long Island, and used to have Doughboy Island in Bass Strait. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Between Tasmania and the mainland of Australia. And I'm a ninth generation Tasmanian. I mean, it was the first post office south of Sydney. But I have a story more about Long Island, where you are, and also Coney Island, and an actual past which hasn't been explained to people. But that could be another bit of a story. Um,
Oh,
are
sounds
you
great.
getting? Are you zooming into Vegas in the southwestern desert yet at all?
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't know if
wow.
you
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to let people
Uh,
know you were
in the
stateside
southwest
or
desert.
yeah.
Oh, well, in the desert, yeah, it's sort of pretty thin out here, but where the powwows are and sweat lodge and stuff, it's pretty good. Um,
Amazing.
anyway, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about a few things, but some people were asking me about, what's going on a little bit with the courts and stuff, and what's really behind that. And CBCAL, which is really a system, which is a criminal banking cartel of a one world order, which when you look, um, who is responsible really is we the people, you see, because it's like what you and I we've selected. So we're going to be talking just a little bit about this because you've got a special prosecutor and who's a private bloke, Jack, and how do you get a private bloke who's Jack to be a special prosecutor when Jack, as a private bloke, he can't hold a position in the corps, you see. So you can't be a private and be in the corps, you see. But Jack, or Jane or John Doe or anyone who is a private can be in the private, but then you've got an article, Rule Article 3 or Article
I
4 clause,
can't
which
speak
you
for why.
should have, you see. And now that's we the people. And and that is the Supreme Court. And why not be in your own suit? Why would someone let themselves be in someone else's suit? Do you know what I mean? But the thing is that when someone's in the private as a national, you can't vote, because you're 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 under the republic as it is, which it was, and it's still ongoing. Only you've got a corpse, which is a Judd government at the moment, and that's in a public circumstance, in a debt, where in the private you have security agreements between yourself, which is in the private, and your own debtor, which is your fictional self, which you own yourself. You don't need a lying through the sense to get to that. But you can't mix up one private bloke, and try to get something out of that where the corpse is, because you're sort of mixing fiction, the private up with the public, or you're mixing up the living with the dead, because you've got a fictional corporate type of circumstance, and that's not anybody who we the people came about from. And so, it's impossible for an illegitimate special prosecutor, which could have been brought down to the level of an infant decedent. Are you there, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Um, anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scene. What do you got on the scene for people there? People's on behind the scene. What do you got on the scene for people there? People's looking at the moment.
Well, you know, let's see. To be honest, I don't follow the current events like I should, but
Oh yeah,
I'm seeing this guy Jack, and he looks like
yeah.
he's got a frock on, and it's got
Oh
purple frock or
well,
something.
yes. The only thing is, of course, where we're looking at everything, it should be we the people that would be trying a president. And what's the precedent when the Crown is, which is a foreign body, which is trying a president? You see, it's sort of quasi, but it's problematic because you've got a mix up of venue, and you don't have proper subject. which it should be really private, and and only equity between the parties, you see, meaning you've got an equalness of security between your all caps, which is your fiction, and that's your feeling about things. This is your property, and no one else could take that away from you. And when we all in the Article 4, Article 3 condition here, where you activate this is an administrative council, and so this is really proper because you've got the living joined with the living, you see. But where you and I, we don't activate that, what's going on is you've got all sorts of mix-up of stuff, you see. So shouldn't people be really looking into that? Because, of course, a private citizen like Jack kind of lacked, of course, the authority to be able to represent anything from the corpse, because how does a private person represent something from the corpse? See? So this is all very problematic, and it's the reason why a lot of that stuff, when it's looked at, it should, well, who's to know? You've got a fictional level, again, looking at a fiction, and you've got an inside looking at its own inside. It's sort of really only we the people, when we become active, something can be done more about everything. But in talking just a little bit, of course, you've got all this asymmetric warfare, which really means like an unusual type of a warfare. It's not boots on the ground. It's sort of really infiltrating departments and things like that. And isn't it that people are trained to go to other foreign nations and things and infiltrate all their departments and this sort of a thing? And people will say that in other nations as well. And every nation is doing that to every other nation for one hand basic. But that one hand is we the people, but it's EU cert, because you and I, we haven't formed any administrative council or anything, and we're just relying upon the corpse to do its own job. And how can it? It's we the people, which is the hand above the government. But a lot of knowledge is of officials in government, of course, where you're seeing really a lot of favoritism and graft and bribe. But where's the check and balance really on that, which is about an enforcement of it, because you've only got a fiction looking at a fiction, you see? And it's, again, only when we the people form the administrative council that something could be so, because we've got a proper chain of command. And isn't it enough for you and I? We see all of this going on, and public officials and things helping us point things out where everything is. And the majority of people are pointing things out, and yet, and there's certain transparency about this, and yet, where's we the people to activate what this is? Because it's just like could have only been Plenty Blood Boy or Rabbit Boy, you see, in one's own being, and not be able to launch an action, just like a stone or a rabbit. And so we're going to be talking just a bit about that, because it's really under a dead man statute. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's really extraordinary. Of course, you've got currency behind a lot of things, and I'm not sure what you're doing about that, but it'd be good to let people know a little bit that, a lot of this sort of involves currency. Yes, it does. And you've got extraordinary authority having been handed over in circumstances which really should be fixed, you see. So you've got a lot of pocket judgment, dead man statute, crime going on underneath that, where how can you question the corpse? You can't. It can't hear you. You can't feel anything about your despair or anything, or your own circumstance. No. And after many multiple investigations, really of extraordinary abuse of power, where officials really have been, where alphabet soup land is, and you've got good people pointing all of this out, and then what happens with that, really? It's in-house, you see. So it's where's the administrative council that sits above the legislative assembly of the state that actually can assist to help where all this is. I think people should really wake up. You've got, the fourth estate, really, Otherwise, you've got a fourth generation type of warfare, which what we're talking about, a warfare of the mind going on. And then who's in charge? So it's really serious sort of allegations which people could see going on if you look at any one time in the past. You could be just like present or even in a future moment. You're going to see that until it stops, which is really this new epoch, which is positive inducted currency, and clearing things up and zeroing out the debt. What does that mean? It means getting people being compensated, you see. So it should be. And the way for us to be able to do that is really only the foreman of a administrative council can be the trustor in the matter for we the people, to have created the currency for this simple, rather than no one knowing what to do. It's like, please take charge, look at this. You see, you've got to activate Article 3 and Article 4 courts and learn more about being in your own clothing, more or less, not being in someone else's clothing. But the failure of serving with the people could be just as similar as any investigation going on, like 280,000 unnecessary spying was done, and perpetual, continuous, and when it's looked at and found, everybody says, oh, it was just unintentional. Oh, okay, well, it just happened to say, yes, it was an accident. It happened. It's like, okay. But you see, the hero really or enemy isn't something which comes to be because it's not investigated like it should be as the proper conditioning would, which is with the people, you see, which is the common condition, which is the proper chain of command where anything is. And so you have, whether somebody is an enemy or even a hero or a friend in your neighborhood or anyone, it's the whole system. It's you. You could be hounded where you are because it's not you don't have to be picked out upon or anything. But where some engagedness is at gunpoint, where lots of people are murdered, of course, where war is, you've got war crimes, and you've got boots on the ground sorts of things. But what's going on more behind the scene, which is sort of like white collar crime and government that's being retaliated and letting retaliation go on, which that's a crime itself, because you're supposed to accept anything, honest. That's a complaint where something could be credible, honest. You can't just deny that, you see, under whistleblower law. But it's a really cause. Most people are just jumping on cause and effect, and they're really not looking, as you and I are in our program, which is really to do with the nature of the event, the nature of things, which is where everyone's right is, not under a dead man's statute. But maybe in the program we could talk just a little bit, even personal. I could share something more about when I investigated what happened where my dad died, you see. And he was a digger as an Anzac in the Royal Australian Regiment, and in the war as a medic stretcher bearer behind the front line, mostly, not on the front line, but yes, behind the front line, finding soldiers and many, matter of fact, and saving those young boys, which they've had children which are here, on Turtle Island.
Thank
But
you
you
for your
see,
service.
you have, how does the dead, as a decedent, you see, question the dead, who is also a decedent? You see, because a corpse is a corpse, as a dead, as a decedent, and you could understand that you could own a corpse, but then you have to actually be in charge of what that is, and what would happen if you're not. Like I found, just that when you would ask a corpse to do something, it's not going to be able to do anything. You have to activate that yourself, and you've a right to do that. And so we could be learning more about our rights, which flow from your natural title, and yet the electoral fraud where has been rife across the globe, and you could go to any nation and look, and you can see issues all of them are having. It's the same, and isn't that because some overall hand is playing off against some hand which is all foreign and foreign, and where is it that you and I, where we have our own internal regulation, which is our own administrative council, which is set up to really regulate things so that you can be helping legislation and being part of the quorum sensing. Otherwise, you're just really allowing this fourth generation warfare that's going on, which is really infiltration of government departments, and those government departments having been infiltrated and used, and you've got company members and stuff doing things and what have you. And it's like where someone is who is a whistleblower, somebody's just going to get the royal snub sort of thing. I mean, you could see that going on, where people could be just rotted off in jail where they are, where they let you know that, hey, people got shot, and the government, that was involved where at the time did this. Well, shouldn't that be corrected and helped and fixed but not hidden? Nothing happened about it. And who reported it then just to rot in some foreign fry farm? You see, what's really the general that's being retaliated against, where you could see that's a crime itself. And, all of us are committing a felony of misprison just to stand by and see those things going on and knowing that that should be corrected. Well, it can be corrected by forming administrative councils like we're talking about, and that's the hand above government. And everyone's giving their substance to fiction otherwise, and we're standing by and letting a precedent be, which is by your decor allowing, the Crown to have been one who would prosecute a president, for instance, which that's completely not proper, is it? If you're a nation, is it? And you're in your own sovereignty. It would be because we the people did this, and this would be correct in its own self, and we'd be kind where we are. We'd be giving people protection, or everybody, because you'd want to know the truth, simple. And you'd want to be helping people where you are, not going after them. So you're keeping in mind that crime really never has a proper domain or claim where it is, and it's not domiciled as it should be proper. And now you've got a lot of crime going on under a corporation which is wild and untamed, and not anything that's from our common sense or common, central organized nervous system. So you've really got crimes of tax, of course, not being reported, where things are like that, and you've got people being more murdered today who oppose things and what have you, and then so by what authority really did this exist? You see, it hasn't been examined. That's the nature. Everybody just run on to some cause of action past that. Terrible. But everything really is a lack of standing where something is. Only having been an infant decedent, and is that a credible witness? No, it's not. So jump into the Supreme Court where you are yourself, be in your own court. That's lowercase NREM. That means, hey, I've got business in the thing. Yes, you do. I've got an interest in the thing. What's that? Well, you've got property that you to protect, and then put that into whatever the courthouse is, and off you go. And now you can get something done, or otherwise you sit there to be formed of something which is more like a grand jury, and whatever is the issue. It could be an Article 4, so you have to have a quorum and things. You've got to have a number to make your quorum and things. 26 is a very good number, of course, isn't it? But it's everything is really more by an interrogatory, meaning it's in the in-house between the living, and it's under seal, and only it comes to be public when it's opened and before the public, and it's the only real Supreme Court which actually has the public within such a must-have, matter of fact. And so it's really the acceptance of proof where somebody is to protect people, where people are in government and things like this, and to protect their families and to protect people, which is engaged where something is. And it's an interrogatory, and you're giving it more as a bill of acceptance, you see. So it's so different. Why shouldn't things be done more like this? Yes, it can. And so euthanasia really has been got underway in the 1920s. I think Nevada was the only state that had none. And there's only a few states which really protect, your trust. Most of the states haven't cared too much to protect people's private property like they should or could. Anyway, but when you think about where the hospital is, of course, you're seeing a lot of iatrogenic deaths, and that's like 1 million people every 4 years, and now way higher. And so there was no other industry where accident occurred which had caused people more to die like this, be so dangerous. If you climb Mount Everest as a profession, you'd be safer than walking through evolving doors at the hospital into that environment, which is a work environment. It has the worst track record within itself, where those that enter those corporations and things like that, they have the highest death rate, iatrogenic death. If you look at it, it's like 250,000 or something per year for a long while, and now I wonder what that is now. You could imagine, but if anything is only put under a code, Lukey, yeah, at the hospital, like at an ICU ward, it's under a code. Now, you and I, we're there, or someone's there, and you're thinking, wow, well, you're hoping that you're really going to get good care, and you're imagining that you certainly are, because now you're in an environment where you can have good care and things. But yet, a lot of things are going on as a code, and it's only a record, and the record is really dead itself. It's not going to speak or nothing. And people can be acting upon a lying through the sense as a corpse, and only acting upon what kind of be written, more or less, but no one home, right? Because people could be just thinking of what they're going to eat for lunch or something.
Oh, jeez.
You see? And so if you only put what is put under a code, like, we don't have any treatment. Okay, well, that's one code that's going to trigger something which can cause euthanasia as part of a treatment for you. You see? And did you know that? Most people can not be aware, really, but you've got medical battery, just the same as you've got legal battery, and where you've got everything put under a dead man statute. Who's the credible witness where something is? So if you've got something like a DNR, which is a do not resuscitate, it means, don't do anything. It shouldn't mean that whatsoever. But processes could remain hidden, couldn't they? Because you wouldn't know something's got a code, and it didn't mean then that someone had to witness to sign off on much of anything, or who did and what was necessary. Something as an infant decedent, and how did an infant decedent only be the one which would sign off on someone's life? You see, this is unlimited where something is. And every day that someone would like to live themselves, they might be there wishing that they could see someone who was coming toward them, like I was, toward my dad, let's say, yes, which is this story a little, which I wouldn't have known that he was to not live a very long life, and he got shot clipped through his neck and his legs, during the time where he was in service. And so he didn't live a long life after this, really, and was a cause of things to be, eventualness. A decision really where something is fallen under a euthanasia law, which is really doesn't really require anybody to individually, as yourself or a family or even a physician or anyone witnessing anything, to really be put under a code, a dead man statute. So it's sort of really treated as a code, and a ment. A ment is your mind, you see, and govern means control. And so if everything was just fallen under a code and nobody was home to be able to say what authority and who's there, and all you're doing is just running along where something is at the end of a treatment. And so now, full code of palliative care is done to you. Yes, it is. In intensive care, I've been on the floor where I've seen it happen right before my very eyes. And also and when I would investigate things, which I'll share with you a little story which happened, which suddenly caused me to be seriously woken up, honest to what's going on more at where things are, where you and I are, which should be really corrected. But which I saw how the Liverpool Care Protocol, which was a pathway that LCP was introduced in the 1990s when they got these patches going, and I saw that nanoparticleized material of carbon was going in there through these patches, which was a bother to me. So I started to look into all of that, and I saw how dangerous that was. It's a long time since the 1990s, but it was really a moment just right in this prior moment, which my father had passed, and it was for me to look into that and see that a protocol had been used behind the scene. Most people really didn't know, you see. But today, if you look, you've got the Five Eyes Nations, which really has copped a lot, and it was put that it said under the statistics that was, that we talked a little bit about, that showed into a future moment what the population really would be, more or less, of various nations and how they would be affected. The Five Eyes Nations were seen to be nations that would really be loss of their population up to a certain degree, like as if this was a targeted condition. So it really was a disease that was really specific to who was connected to each other more as one group relative versus the other group on a chessboard, all of it owned relatively. See, so at the one end of a treatment where anybody was, it didn't work. Let's say it's I mean, the treatment stopped. They go, yeah, it didn't work. It's like, so what happens here? Well, you're in between things, and you're being assessed at this point. You could be very young, baby, child, older. And who's looking at it is, what sort of quality of life would you have? And they're thinking, you don't look like you're worth it. Do you know what I mean? And everybody says you're going to be suffered, you're going to have not a good life. You fall into the category of really having special treatment. You know what I mean? Put to death kindly. That's what it's kind of said, which, that isn't right. Why? Because it does not, it overrides your own sense of what you care for yourself and how would anyone else know that? And that you had life to live and you could have easily lived, and my father could have lived well and truly, and I could have seen him. Yes? Because I asked about the story of how things happened, and I could see that suddenly something occurred. It wasn't like a fitness all of a sudden wasn't there. A fitness was there that would be well and truly enough. That would be not his natural cause of death, but iatrogenically caused. And so an assessment code is given if you're at the end of a treatment or something, you see, or you're in between treatments and they're wondering what to do with you, and you're complaining, or you don't feel right, in yourself, sort of thing. A lethal medical euthanasia type of condition can automatically be given as a code of palliative care, and where something was really withdrawn all of a sudden as a treatment. Yes, like water, like food, like for everything.
Okay.
Yes, and so this LCP, this Liverpool care pathway, graduates its own self into other types of names, but it's really a do not resuscitate type of condition, which is the code. It's automatic, and so where's the credible witness where this is, and don't bonds that get set off not engage securities? They sure do. And when you're dead, what happens to the debt? Yeah, no longer owed. Comes to the people who own the corpse. It's a profit to them. And it's a debt that does not have to be paid. So iatrogenic death, really keep in mind, of course, you've really got fentanyl having come in. And if it's just destined that, depopulation is, and people are the enemy themselves because they are not at all being responsible, because not a single one of them steps up to the plate really and forms an administrative council like you should. You see? So if we keep in
Yeah.
mind, of course, you've really got dying enemy soldiers. My dad told me, hey, you know what? My enemy, no matter what, if he had his guts out, he'd give that bloke a sip from his water canteen. Personal.
Thank you.
Well, you're seeing a lot of things, aren't you? I mean, all the roundups, 20,000 all got rounded up because collectively they must be punished in one of these South American nations. Of course, people could hear about and learn. But going back to 2013, in this story about the iatrogenic death, it really starts to become more known about the LCP process. But long before this, I'd seen what happened to my father, you see. Yes, which we'll talk just a bit about in a second here. But it's interesting because you've really got the same type of palliative sorts of documents, which is care, which I really looked at more as a forensic expert with my eye, just quick, smart. I saw how it was where, somebody was really before and what was their health and everything that was like that. I mean, then you're looking at the medical records because you could have an opportunity to have done that like I did. And so you could really see, and by asking everybody how everything was, you could see, hey, everything was pretty easily fairly alive, and everything was where someone was, where their wish was basic. And my dad's wish was, of course, that he would see his eldest son, of course, which I'd been away for a long, long while, way more than I ever thought, and I'd never seen him again since I left, basically, except for a small moment before all this. But I wouldn't be able to get to him, you see. And the last things, more or less, he said was, "Is David there?" So you can tell something was taken away. He wasn't thinking he would be ready just to die in 49 hours. And so you've got all sorts of things, which every condition where somebody is really a neoplastic condition. And then you could live with a lot of what that is up to a certain point and things. And certain amount of chemicals could have been needed and water and all sorts of things. And if all of a sudden that's withdrawn and other things are added to that to actually cause your life no longer to be finished, sort of like you've been given a code where the hospital has got to clean that bed, you've got to clear away, and we made a decision that, you're not meant now, or we're being kind to you. But nobody is thinking that. It's just automatic. They look and see this is what is needed, and that's what not needed. It's just written, and this is a treatment, and people are just carrying out what that treatment is, unthinking. Check out the Milgram experiment. Most everybody should know about that. 67% of people would actually take you to your death. There's only 33% of these people are left, which are listening to programs like this, you see.
Right.
I mean, I'm checking out things, but Money definitely is going on behind the scene. I'm not sure what you're doing with that, but it's very good. But look, you've got to go in between, and you can see where people are now. I see wards and stuff, and IVs and getting dripped and stuff. And what's going in there, really, um, a lot of stuff which I saw was toxic, really. But if you're just coming back to iatrogenic death and the treatment, and where you're at the end of a treatment, where you're in between treatment, and it's deemed that by the DNR you've got a code that sort of comes to be people filled something out and it's sort of like added up, and now the AI of it just says, sorry, but you've entered under a dead man statute, and your life now really has to be dealt by this statute, and it says you have to be administered this treatment, which is all sustenance was removed from my dad. You see, he had only had 3 days left after that code was activated automatically. I'll just share a small story in a moment. How did I actually find this out and what have you? But I really went there and connected in, and I connected with one of the younger doctors there, and I just asked what could I see. And I was able to have a little bit of a look at some things, which I could see that some things was missing. I asked for the very things which was missing, but I'll talk a bit about this in a second here. But you've got a code that's activated automatically, of course, and you're not going to say that's not something which is going on all over the place, because this is back in the 1990s. So you've got 30 years ongoing where something which I've been a witness right in the ICU ward and witnessed this go on, where you, of course, execute people, which is wrong. Nobody has a right to put anybody to death. And most people are there in jail. They don't have someone that they could, as a witness, cross-examine and put there under a dead man statute, which one day we'll talk a bit more about that perhaps. But you've got really a given lethal combination of drugs, which really could only cause you to be able to last 48 or 49 hours afterward on average. And some people pretty much don't make it within the first few hours or more after it. But depending on how much the cocktail more or less is, of course, you've got no conscious decision really by the bloke or someone like my dad. And he's not thinking that's to be incurred. It's just been automatic that something was deemed as the code, which it was. And so all the family members, not even necessarily the physician or anyone, nobody's suspecting anything. This is just a natural occurrence, and everybody sort of dies, and somebody has to have some way to give them peace about it or something, and automatically it happens. But when it takes away your right, you care, that you would love to be able to see things, make things complete. You thought yourself you would. And this is not an act of God that happened, you see, in and of itself. No, intervention was. And none of these past conditions where euthanasia, it's completely unethical. It's the reason why nothing occurred in the state of Nevada, which all the other states massive. It happened a lot. And today. And so now you could know where prudent witness is. It's certainly not an infant decedent. That's a fiction. That's at a corporate level, and it's not a proper credible witness, really. And so you could think all the banking that goes on where some security is supposed to be, but everything is put under a dead man statute, which comes to be something non-negotiable. Well, it's non-negotiable because finally you've got who's the credible witness are dead. But how did it happen? And to see my dad, of course, life suddenly just gone. I didn't get there in time. And for him to die, of course, he didn't question that something had gone on where the protocol was, but I could tell you from being present where people are, where I've been totally present where this has occurred, I could tell you what they felt and what they went through because I was right there with them. in circumstances like this as a neurobehavior physiologist, and a lot of the work that I've done in the past and stuff, which really just to look and observe where things are, but to really talk was, and I'd find out, that a terminal code had been placed, of course, and I looked and I could see where this was in the medical record, and you could actually, as many would, and like myself, I saw in the records that's dead, of course, that was not something anybody had that had a central organized nervous system. See, this is what we're saying. It needs to be regulated. You've got a further complication, of course, because somebody says, well, it looks like we could have an infection and something, and so now it doubles whatever they thought to do. It's like, so now, well, we're going to consider a terminal triggered code because, a person has to be given sort of a palliative care and they need to have a life. Some comfort must be taken away from them because we're not going to let them days sort of to be, struggled or something. And that could be a young baby, a young person. Yes, because I've seen that happen. Once I saw this, as I looked into it, and as I said, it comes to me suddenly because I really looked behind the scene to see what happened to my dad, you see. And I saw that nobody else was really looking at anything that was like this. They had no knowledge of it even. There were just concerns about the family and things and stuff, and who would be cared to look in another way. But a lethal drug combination was really given, and he wouldn't have, as anybody would have been cognizant of the last wish more being that's it, and not able to be complete, which he would have and did have enough, well and truly, to have ease of ability to have seen his son and other things that he thought of as well. But this was the last few things that he said. And my brother would tell me, as a comfort, of course, you could know that as you're looking at this, it's really hell. Now, everybody will say, no, it's not hell. No. Look, when you've got an ab reaction, I don't know if anybody knows what the hell that is. It's sort of like a panicky type of a state. If somebody hasn't had that happen, they kind of don't know. But some people would. They should let others know what that's like, because that's what it goes on in your mind. It's not normal, not at all. Total opposite, matter of fact. When the protocol was triggered, it was only really 49 hours at the max. You're supposed to, somebody will live. That's it. You get the cackle and slowly, that's it. They can't breathe. Their breathing is shut down. And so for the first hand experience of observing this, I researched sort of briefly after that, but I looked whilst I was there, you see, in the city, and I saw a wrongfully removed sorts of chemicals that have been given that would definitely cause a lack of anything sustainable after that. And along with it, I saw a treatment that was even water and everything that was removed. And so, my dad, he would go into suffering of dehydration. Drying up and feeling like you can't take a breath. And so now, how long did he last? He lasted all those hours. And you must have a pretty friggin' strong capacity to do that up to a certain point. But it's lethal. It's going to be. It doesn't matter what your fitness is. It could have gone done quicker and less. But I saw that a certain amount of fitness was there because last had passed the point which someone might. And so, first, of course, I saw that witnessing wasn't proper where anything genocide was as a protocol. And that my father wasn't really ready to go, not at all. And he had no knowledge of what was coming to him in this way where he was. He only knew that I was coming to see him, you see. And so he wouldn't have known that someone would intervene and or by an automatic code get triggered and the medical lethal battery legal would be under a dead man statue of no credible witness like we're just talking about and a protocol of euthanasia just used on my dad. And so, where I've witnessed this, you've got a seethingness, a deeply felt sort of something is wrong, I don't know. This is what people feel because I've been present where that's gone on. And afterwards, I saw firsthand, of course, even my good mate put to death in a hospital protocol. And I was right with him when it happened. And I was going, Jesus, this is really weird. And I go, yes, it is. And he said, I don't want to go on to this intubation. And I said, I don't think you should. And he said, well, these people reckon that that's what they're going to do. And so when I connected with these young blokes, most of them were going home. It was a code. The code was triggered. And now what I saw happen was really first-hand witness, and seeing the whole thing happen. And could I explain anything to people? This is what it was for me to really learn more about what to do where something is. You see, now I have learned what this is, and it's like, hey, maybe we should all pay attention to the fourth estate, which is speaking, which is, we're the people. And being in charge where something is, being home and forming administrative councils to set things up to help people in government, please. This is part of the government. So anyway, my dad's condition, of course, was seen just more or less as some consequence of natural cause on the certificate, kind of, right? But not serious dehydration, which was because water was removed. It was not a natural underlying condition whatsoever. It was really a sudden failure that was because of the condition that acted upon him, which I saw came back to the beginnedness of this Liverpool care pathway, which everybody was studying ageism, which was how do we get rid of people and only make them live to be maybe 60 or something. And that's it. And we'll design everything so that, it'll be okay for somebody to live to 60 and say you've got a certain amount of toxin, certain amount of this, certain amount of that. And a lot of the restrictions all got reduced, that experimental ways to get morphine into people using these patches. And I saw toxin being used with all of it. But the hydration was really not within anyone's radar. And when I asked the junior doctor who was instructing me, and I was really looking at the protocol, it was a document that we had both in front of us, and I looked at basically really what was a DNR document, and I could see how much and how deeper back where that had been triggered the hours before more, that it all led to his demise of its whole self. And so people were left just to die, and people could look and see, gee, that's what happened. I could see that happened recently, sort of thing. It's like, wow, no one truly can understand that. Honest to God, this has been going on, which I saw maybe longer, but I saw this happening in by the early 1990s. I see it all kicked off, and so hearsay 30 years ago or more was a rule of death by protocol, which really doesn't really occur, that you've just got an infant decedent as a witness, not credible whatsoever, not trustworthy, and how can you question the dead after that? You see? Yeah. So how safe is that? I mean, that is like what's going on, and these are sorts of things that need to be corrected. Of course, iatrogenic death, like we were saying, is really the highest cause of death, and under a dead man statute, you've got responses which was like what I was given really at the hospital when I started to look into this a little bit more, and I was thinking, shouldn't I actually go and connect more with others a bit about this and things? But first, I wasn't able to raise any concern too much from the family. They just think, oh no, who was meant to go, But I was considerate of it more because when I heard, no, he wanted to see me, and I was thinking, well, How did he actually die? How did he die so suddenly? Yes, it was sudden. It was like suddenly, and my brother, I think, saw him after, I think it was maybe 29 hours after that had been administered that I saw. And so, he hadn't seen my dad for that little bit of time there, small, because he was going in really seeing him and everything. But he'd already been administered that and was underway. So, and would any one of us know that? No. And would they even be suspecting something like this? No. It's just like, quality of life, suddenly the index, it's like really organ failure. Boop, 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 boop. Yep. What happened? Oh, lights come on. Something's happening. Oh, is that? Yeah, got a little bit of time left to live. And so, oh wow, really? Yeah, fatal condition. You know what I mean? Logged, and it was logged a long time before this as a fatal condition. Long, long, long time before this. So the two just added up in a moment on the code, and all of a sudden something gets triggered, and that's it. And so my dad's death really was you know like I'm talking about, more correct, like what I'm saying in the aspect of it, which clinically it didn't match, like I said, with what the proper medical record was that I saw, was how it was all witnessed. And so all and the evidence of things which was left out and what was put in was cherry picked, like you would just put what needed to be, like nothing, no need to look here. All was really odd though, of course. And my brother, when all of a sudden he saw Dad, he knew, something's really gone on. And that's right, yes. It was, I think, maybe just only maybe another 29 hours or something. It was 29 hours or so, I think, when I remember something like that, that the DC code had been triggered, and it was really a prognosis of more or less where someone would really die in a future. And so what was done was to take the palliative care away, but this would be palliative care to be given because it was just a code that would be done, so you'd be given some drugs to actually cause your body to die. And the idea that it was natural cause didn't match up with what I saw, which was there, right there in the medical record. It was really, and so when I requested people that they could look into this a little bit, most were scratching their heads and they couldn't quite understand even what I was saying. It's like, okay, well, wow. I mean, I hope with your listening, you can perfectly understand this, and not that a paradigm paralysis exists. And even for people within my family, when I share this with them, most of them got a paradigm paralysis. This couldn't be so. That's not happening. Gee. And that's, most of us could think this way. But nothing really was in the background that I saw that was terminal in the moment before that protocol got triggered. And that was the trigger that caused his death as a process, as a treatment. And so to reduce your fluids, and cause you to be dehydrated and slowly cause you to die. There was a time frame of once they had triggered that, some time passed, of course, which showed how much he had in a feeling to want to live, because if you really didn't have that will there, damn it, I tell you, what they did would just typically, knock a bloke out or knock someone out. And so is someone really, you should be given something dignified, for Christ's sake. Yeah, it's so bad. But you see people which is in your family, and why shouldn't you think about everyone this way? Okay. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
My father, he was a stretcher bearer, of course, like I said, in the war. And under a dead man's statute, it was, God help us, it was come to me to be seen. How crazy that was. You, not the living being, coming from your private, which maybe people should look into some of these other podcasts that we've done. But it really is, how could, time be where what your real asset is a debt that's incurred as your real asset. I mean, it was really my dad didn't really have to have any power of attorney credible to be present or having anything knowledgeable as a protocol, and everything was really asked just as an idea done, and no one questioning what that would be. It's really the Milgram experiment right there. 67% of people, there's enough people to really just be onward going. The rest of people just maybe don't want to be involved where that is, perhaps. But you've got a hand which really wasn't informed, of course, and it was a time at all, and no timedness that were personal, that was private, you see, that was natural of a cycle, but just mechanical itself. And so the records that I looked wasn't even complete or proper. There were crucial data that was missing, and then I really confirmed, and I saw where the dehydration and the IV fluids was removed, and drugs that was been administered. That suddenly there was a lethal combination, and that I saw that my dad really, or anybody, would have really only had 49 hours more or less to have lived after that point. That would be administered, and so who owns the asset of the debt after this? You see, is no longer living, and the state then comes in. So it's really an adverse counterclaim with somebody who has in the living. That's about what this is, where someone is, can administer a will. Otherwise, like I said, the reason why that all happened was because it's under a dead man's statute. You see, yeah, and it's just where's the credible witness there? So kind of, I hope that it's a show where anyone is. We started out talking about Jack Smith and the president, but there's only a public, which you have a public self out there, which is only a corporate self, which is of no natural right, and you have a private self, which you have equity between your debtor, which you own, and yourself, and this is only equity to equity versus the other one is litigation itself. You see, and so somebody could help to correct where something is, and we the people can be more engaged and look into things quickly, because if you don't, it's a certain disaster going on, certainly, and the end of life care could be killing family members. My dad really did, live his irrevocable self. He organised his burial, so his head would be placed at the feet of another soldier, and he eventually sort of passes, of course, and my dad, the bloke who he laid his head at in his grave was really a good mate of his. Anyway, being a medic and a stretcher bearer, you can't carry a weapon, and but you've got so much gear that you're laden down. People could have a little look into and see what the circumstances of things, but you could see people in life where others are in their day, and couldn't there be good news for people? Yes. Couldn't you look at things in a stoic manner and be able to help correct things? I think that's so important. But where somebody would be awarded medals for bravery, like my dad was, and he saved a lot of American boys' lives, and families are now living more, as a result of this, you see. But he didn't do this for, his grandson, for instance, to be just stolen, and conditions that's like that, nor for his life to be taken before he could see his son again. And so, one has to have laid their own life down to assist others, and why not be the mendicant? It should be, because you can see people falling on both sides of the fence. Stop this polarization and pick up the things which you should quickly and help defend freedom, like more where you are here and where you're listening at your own home and things, you see. Many things which really I've learned, I saw all happiness where things are, where the family members are, and life and everything and living to this day. But being a credible witness, really, and only looking and seeing, hey, an infant decedent isn't a lawful, proper, witness where things are that's credible per se for some things to have taken place, like someone's death, let's say, or your property to be removed. And what could you do as a one-pager to have cleared up something? Well, all this which we've been talking about, yes, it's a controversy, isn't it? It's sort of about you only having an ID as an infant decedent, isn't it? And that's not credible, you see, as a witness. And so some things should really be more verified, and because it's not, this should be regulated. Capitalism is a form of communism and all its degrees of fascism because it's mixing up the corpse with the dead, you see? So there's a reason that's existing more for the Administrative Council, like what our work is very much about, for people listening. You can't tell me that lots of crime is not going on and you feel fine about that. You see, it's all you need to do is to ask a question and be in the proper condition to do this. But it's not right we would all stand by and see the Crown prosecuting our president or a president only on a fictional level. And that be the president. Precedent, what does that mean? It means we're okay with the Crown continuing on ruling over things. Why? Well, because you and I, we're not really doing a proper job, are we? You see? Okay. I think
Okay.
a good show. But I think that if in the ICU ward or where someone is in hospital, you can see people suffering, of course, and bank trucks and things behind this. Of course, death by suffocation, which happened to my dad, and people where they're given the drug combination 49 hours after the dose, you're done for pretty much on average. But today, of course, you've got midazolam, and that's would be given to people to intubate them and things during this time. That's what one of the drugs that actually killed people, older people and stuff. And then they're given other sorts of things which paralyze the muscles so that you don't like thrash or something, but you sort of can feel your limbs being become paralyzed. So vecuronium bromide is like a good example of that. Calcium chloride and things like that, which is in the medical record, you could see a certain amount of substance that's administered is going to stop the heart, and it's going to take a certain amount of time for that to occur. But it weakens and stops the thrashing some, causes people to groan more, these were all things a little bit that was a morbid condition that happens to anyone go through this, and you have a major abreaction after it's done to you. You see, you've lost your mind whilst you're there. Suddenly you think, oh my God, what's happened? You see, it's an ongoing for many hours of an abreaction after that's administered. And can anybody come back to be reported of it? No, we think what a comfortable death we had. We didn't administer anything that was the most painful death that anybody could have. And so depending on the dose and cocktailed that would be given to achieve death, of course, can you say that's not going on? I personally think, you need to look at a brick that just doesn't fit into the wall that you've thought. It just comes crumbling down, doesn't it? Because it's a brick that just doesn't fit in the wall that's existed where you've thought. And so, a paradigm paralysis could have been where your brain wasn't able to go past something in the way that you saw something, but it's certain that once you're given these drugs, you can feel absolutely that paralysis slowly spread through various parts of your body, you see? Yes? And you're conscious of it as it happens. Also, slowly, you can't breathe and you can feel like, oh my God, it's like you're not getting enough air. Have you ever felt that, like you push your heart rate up to suddenly you can feel like if I feel like I could pass out? Or you feel like, whoa, I can have overdone it? I don't know. Somebody has to feel like that. And now you'll feel like what it is,
It's the
where
worst.
suffocation is. Like you're suffocating. Your body can't get enough oxygen. You're burning up. And that's what a holocaust is. You're burning up. You see, that's what that means. A holocaustedness. And so slowly, where one is, while they were in a sense of consciousness, you see, you can feel the actual assaultedness, honest to God, of the toxin administered. And suddenly, of course, ever more onward and afterward. And then where I've asked people which had happened to them, and I saw this occur, it's like liquid fire, they'll tell you, they feel. And so potassium, of course, eventually enters more and more the heart, and eventually, it doesn't have any power to keep running and stuff, and so won't have a proper rhythm and final, you see, because there's no respiration. It shuts respiration down. So you've got a whole range of different combinations of hydromorphine types of things, and you've got different types of DNIs and DNR types of code. A DNI can be a do not, intubate, or a DNR could be do not resuscitate. And these are all things which could be being given, you see, as a code. Nitrogen hypoxia and all sorts of things, and hypercapnia also suffocate the body. Other things, and I don't want to tell you more about what I've gone and seen and witnessed, but the body really can last until your last breath, like it did for my dad or anyone, his first breath and his last breath. And I've seen sort of how people are being administered barbiturate, fentanyl and things that's like this, and even benzodiazepines and things, and midazolam and things, and these. And so, it's really the fourth estate that is a government that is above the corporation that really should look into and ask the questions and cause Congress to start to enact laws more to help protect people that's in the system at this moment. That could just say that anything that could be put under a dead man statute should be just stopped, period. It's like unlawful. And at the moment, that's what should happen. We, the fourth estate, should do this because we're above the legislative council. Yes? So
Okay.
anyway, I don't know. I think we've had a pretty good show today. We've really been talking about how favoritism is, which we could see a lot going on in the public, and what's going on in the private. Can we kick off what's going on and should be? And this is we the people. We are the private. You see? Yes? Anyway, all right.
Dr. Jubb,
Well,
I feel what you're saying. It really resonates with me deeply, and I want to be able to take your teachings and help people like you're doing for me and like your dad did. And I feel bad that I've not done it until now.
yeah. Well, we're really in the moment, and everything is not the same strokes as anything was. Like you said, that's true. Most are not talking about the nature of things, which is about all these broadcasts, what we're doing as a subject matter, and is a lot which has been the topic of what we've talked about in eye awareness and books about your identity, and then how do you get information. But for me, looking into this, I certainly saw what communism was and what fascism is. I saw capitalism and degrees of fascism, and I could see how did all of that occur more. And time is, quite a bit. But where we are, I think people could really look into the Papa Hollow Bones, read up, learn a bit more about this. But stop talking more about the cause and effect of something which is so far downstream, because you're not going to get anything with that. Of course, you could have a talk and you could clear things up, but start by thinking about the nature more about who and what, and are you okay with who and what. I think most people may be not too okay with who and what, but you should be, right? And I think that's kind of what our talks have been about. Anyway, look, I hope everybody's really having a great time as they're listening to these podcasts, and maybe it's a worthwhile thing for you to be able to listen back through this because it could be some things that's really interesting to you. Anyway, and I'm really glad for you putting some visuals behind everything, Lukey. Anyway, love you, mate, and
My
catch up
pleasure,
to you
Dr.
maybe tomorrow or something, mate. Love you, mate.
Love you too, Dr. Jubb. Thank
Good
you
mate,
so
good
much.
mate. All right.